The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this episode are that of the guest and host and do not necessarily reflect the values of sponsors or other associated organizations. Welcome to the Parental Compass, presented by Family Education and Support Services. I am your host, Bobby Williams. If you like what you hear, tell a friend about it. Subscribe to us on whatever platform you're listening to us on. We're on all the big ones. We're out here. Sleep. We all know it's important, but we don't always know a lot about it. What's really happening while you sleep? How can you help a child to fall asleep easier? Are our brains actually going to different dimensions while we dream? We didn't quite cover all that, but we did talk about dreams. Our guest today is Emily McMason. Emily is a parenting and sleep coach. She has a master's degree from a little school called Harvard, among several other degrees. She really knows what she's talking about. Let's check out this conversation.
So quality of sleep is when we're trying to get, there are 4 stages in every sleep cycle that we have. And each sleep cycle is about 90 to 120 minutes, depends on the person. And you want to string together a number of those sleep cycles throughout the whole night. If our sleep gets interrupted partway through the night, it usually will interrupt us, between stages 1 and 2, or between stages 2 and 3, or 3 and 4. That affects our quality of sleep because we're getting woken up. And when we try to fall back to sleep, we have to start the process over again.
Oh, I was between 3 and 4. I was almost there. Could you briefly explain what are these different stages of sleep? What do they do?
So there are 4 stages, and each stage has its own unique job. And so stage 1 is sort of that twitchy phase when you're, first falling asleep. Normally it takes anywhere from 1 to 10 minutes on average, although we know that when we're stressed, it takes us a lot longer to fall asleep. Stage 2 is when we descend into deep sleep. So our breathing regulates, our temperature drops, our heart rate goes down. We're really getting into that good sleep segment. Then there's stage 3, and stage 3 is growth and repair. And so this is when your immune system is doing its work. For kids, this is when their growing is happening. Stage 3 is when our body is completely relaxed. Our muscles are just totally relaxed. Our tongue actually swells to about twice its normal size because it's actually relaxed in our sleep.
Wow.
If you grind your teeth at night, you do that during stage 3 of sleep because your jaw is trying to activate to get your tongue to take up less space so you can breathe better. And probably the most famous stage of sleep is stage 4, which is our REM sleep. It's when we're dreaming.
Why does your body do that little twitchy thing? What's that all about?
So part of it is, as it's descending into sleep, the muscles need to be doing different things. We're towards stage 3 where we're going to totally relax. And so sometimes it's just that energy is getting released along the way as we're changing our state of consciousness from awake to asleep. Sometimes
I'll just wake up and I'm just instantly anxious. I'll wake up at 4 in the morning and is there some connection between being anxious and 4 in the morning?
Yes. So great question. You ask really good questions, by the way. Yes. Serotonin, which is sort of considered our happiness hormone, has its dip in those early morning hours. How much we have it in our body in a 24-hour time period, that's when it hits its lowest. So we're sort of the least content at that time in the morning. The other piece is if we have stress from the day before, our cortisol load, the cortisol hormone will be very high in our bodies. And that's kind of what's waking us up one sleep cycle too soon. And so when we wake up, it's, we're waking up because we've got too much stress in our bodies.
Well, let's take it back to talking about the children. So one struggle a lot of parents have to deal with is getting their child to go to bed when it's time to go to bed. And sometimes they'll be, well, I guess first question is, are there any best practices for how to get them to go to bed?
Yeah. Yes. You want a bedtime routine to be fairly straightforward. You want it to be consistent from night to night to night. You don't want it to take too much time. If there are too many elements in it, it's sort of like running. If you know you have to run 2 or 3 errands on the weekend, you're like, fine, I can do this. If you have to run 7 or 8 errands, it's not that the individual thing is bugs you, but it's the collection of them that feels like it's too much. Same
So
thing
like
with
take
kids in
a
the
bath,
evenings.
do this, do that.
Yeah, exactly. And bath is a great example. We as adults think of baths as these like relaxing times. We might light candles, we might have bubbles. We think of it as this a treat. For kids, putting a lot of kids putting them in the bathtub is kind of like taking them to Great Wolf Lodge. It's way overstimulating and they amp way up right when we're trying to calm them back down for the night.
So baths are better in the morning then.
Yeah, or just any other time of day.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Sometimes they're really great in that witching hour, kind of, before dinner time or right after dinner when, you've got another hour or two before bedtime.
Hmm. A lot of times kids will say, I'm not tired. And how can you tell, okay, they're just saying that because they don't want to go to sleep versus maybe they have a real sleeping problem and they legit aren't tired?
It's a it's an interesting question. There are a couple of pieces to it. One is looking at, are they getting enough sleep in a 24-hour period? There was a great sleep study that looked at like over 300 sleep studies and brought all that sleep data together. And so we know pretty well, how many hours in a 24-hour period each age group should be getting. And so then if your kiddo is, saying, I'm not tired, it's looking at like, well, are you getting enough sleep? Because if you're not getting enough sleep, the body will keep itself awake. It'll jack us up to keep us awake longer. And so it'll feel like I'm not tired. We've all got that second wind before. That's what's happening, that your body is coasting down. You'll see a kiddo kind of interact more quietly, kind of mellowing out. And then all of a sudden they'll amp back up again. It's that down spot, that quiet spot is when their head wants to be hitting the pillow.
It's
Um,
such a delicate thing of like, you have to get it at this time. It has to be this many hours. I've heard if you oversleep, that's bad. Is that really true?
it's not something that it can be, yes, especially somebody who has depression, that can be absolutely one of the pieces for it. But in terms of looking at whether or not they're getting enough sleep, for the vast majority of us, it isn't too much sleep. It's not enough sleep. That's really the culprit.
Okay, so it's all right to sleep in.
Yeah, you want to be a little careful with sleeping in. Some of us, Friday night stay up late and sleep in Saturday. Saturday night stay up late and sleep in Sunday. But
My
that's
favorite.
essentially like, yeah, getting on an airplane and flying to New York and back just over a weekend. So we're giving ourselves jet lag when we do that. So we once in a while, totally fun, absolutely. But generally, we want to be a little careful about it and check in with ourselves if we're wearing ourselves out by doing that.
That's interesting because as an adult, you think, well, that's my free time. I got to get it in. I got to have
Yeah,
this fun. But then Mondays are always miserable for it.
they are. And, uh, the Monday after spring forward, so we have 1 hour of sleep that weekend, right? When our clocks change, the fatalities on US roadways actually goes up by 17% on that Monday.
Dang.
That just that 1 hour of lost sleep impacts our abilities that drastically.
Constant for parents is newborn babies. They don't want to sleep through the night. Is there any way to alleviate that or make it better? Or what can you do there? That seems like an unanswerable challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we start at a baby's due date, the first 3 months or so, a baby sleeps the same way it did in utero. So as adults, we have that 4-stage sleep cycle, but for newborns, they only have a 2-stage sleep cycle. They dream first and then they grow. And they're used to the way that they slept in utero. So newborns actually are pretty portable sleepers. They'll sleep while you're doing vacuuming. They'll sleep with noises. They'll sleep with lights on. But then around 4 months, what gets popularly called a sleep regression is actually this amazing sleep progress that happens. And it's when a baby 2-stage sleep cycle and grows into the 4-stage sleep cycle. And it takes a lot of work and it's hard on a baby's brain. So usually months 4 to 6 are when parents are doing a lot of shushing and rocking and swaddling and really working to get a baby to fall asleep. And so as that baby is learning that, then during the nights, they'll sleep through one sleep cycle, but they can't quite get themselves down for another sleep cycle. So early in the night, you can get kind of a 3, 4, 5 hour stretch at the beginning of the night. And then they start waking up really regularly every hour or two as the night goes on. So for most babies, it's between months 7 and 9 when they're really ready to start learning how to fall asleep and stay asleep on their own. Some parents get lucky. It happens a little earlier, but on average, that's about when it happens.
It's interesting how that's a development skill of knowing how to fall asleep. What about teenagers? That seems like another odd time for sleeper. I remember being a teenager and just being so tired the whole class day. Yeah. And so I'd like immediately take a nap and sleep for like 2.5 hours and then just be up till 1 a.m. and be tired the next day. I assume that wasn't just me, right?
Not at all. It's a phenomenon that schools are now looking at having later start times for our teens. As kids enter into puberty, they get washes of hormones 6 to 7 times a day. And those hormones impede the work of the pineal gland. The pineal gland's kind of in the center of the brain. It's about 1/3 of an inch long. And its job is to make melatonin. That's what makes us sleepy. But the hormones of puberty don't allow that to happen. And so it takes time for all those hormones during the day. So then our teenagers who aren't tired until 11, 12, 1 a.m. So for them, the best things we can be doing are, having those later start times for school, but also having them nap. Even 20 minutes at the end of the school day can make a big difference to their experience.
Interesting. Yeah, you mentioned melatonin. Do you have any thoughts about it? Is it helpful? Is it not? What's your stance?
It is really great in small bursts. And so what melatonin does is it helps us fall asleep. It's not going to keep you asleep. And so if it's that problem of falling asleep, so especially if we're trying to realign a child's sleep timing, like maybe they aren't getting it, we need to be putting them down earlier, that can be really helpful, for a week or so, just to really kind of get their system regulated again. There are some good studies also about specific forms of magnesium for adults. And so adults can do magnesium at night. Chamomile tea, lots of people talk about that. That's got some compounds in it that can be really helpful in helping kids and adults fall as well. And there is a subgroup within kiddos that have ADD and ADHD that they are on melatonin all the time because their brain, the pineal gland, just isn't making a sufficient amount for them. And so they take melatonin nightly as part of their bedtime routine.
Yeah. Sometimes it seems like if you take melatonin too much, it stops working after a week or so.
The concern is that if you use it too often, the body will stop making its own supply of it. So yeah.
It's like, I don't need to make it anymore. It's covered.
Exactly.
What about ZQL?
Oh, everybody kind of has their favorite thing that helps them fall asleep. I think that, we know that either the over-the-counter or prescription sleep aids come with their own drawbacks or their own side effects. And so that's kind of a person-to-person choice around it. Generally speaking, the more we can stay on, things like the magnesium or the chamomile tea or some melatonin is probably better, but it's nice to have those sleep aids when we need them for sure. And then another piece is looking at, if you need to take something like that every night, let's look at what's going on in the daytime. Let's look at what your stressors are. And you can't always eliminate what's stressful. You change how you deal with the stress you get from those pieces. So looking at, what are the habits? What are the rituals you do? How do you take breaks during the day that actually can make a really big effect on nighttime sleep? And even things like, oftentimes when we first get up in the morning, if you go outside first thing in the morning, within about 30 minutes of when you wake up, and depending on how bright the sky is, being outside anywhere from 2 to 10 minutes, that will actually kickstart your circadian rhythm. That's what starts your internal clock for the day. And so daylight, not through windows, but actual daylight makes a huge difference by nighttime. And eliminating our screen time. Our eyes become more and more sensitive to light as the night and the day progress. And so the effect of a screen at 9 a.m. is very different than the effect of it at 9 p.m.
It really makes you think how we're all just animals from nature and the sun and things like that.
Absolutely.
Even our overhead lights bad.
Yes.
Like we just think that's a little sun or something.
Well, during the day, no problem to have overhead lights that are on. But as you approach evening around sunset hours, we want to turn off our lights, start using lamps, start using lower light, floor lighting. We want to be signaling to our body that the day is coming to an end. And then one other piece for adults, because the bath time being kind of overstimulating for little ones, but if we stand in a shower or take a bath or a sauna, kind of right bed and stay in it long enough until our body really heats up, that also accelerates the falling asleep process and can be really helpful.
Wow. Well, this has been super informative and an interesting topic. Do you have any closing ideas that you want to share with everyone?
Oftentimes parents will worry that they're putting their kids too early. You have a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old who's still going to bed at 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night. And sometimes parents will say, well, I don't get to enjoy them as much. And I would remind parents there's quantity of time and then there's quality of time. And what, we want to really enjoy our child when they're at their best. Getting them enough sleep is really the biggest part of that experience for them. And then know your own kiddo, because you may have a child that once a week they can absolutely stay up later than bedtime, together. So setting that solid routine allows you then to give permission for those fun activities together.
I think talking about weekends earlier, also it's like the time when your child is asleep, you feel like you want to stay up till midnight because that's when you can watch Game of Thrones or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. It's really vital that we all have that me time, whether it's for self-care or soul care, however we want to be describing it or taking care of it. But doing it at the expense of our sleep actually doesn't set us up well for the next day to be our best selves. And so really prioritizing our own downtime, even when the kids are around. So if you are parenting with a partner, every other day, one person gets a chunk of those waking hours to themselves. So the kids see it too. We're good at helping our kids focus and relax and play hard and work hard, but we're not necessarily great at modeling that. And so saying that we matter too and taking time to do that for ourselves.
You're allowed to have a life outside of being a parent.
Exactly.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for being here.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so very much for asking me.
Thank you, Emily. I feel like this interview, I really learned a lot. I hope you did too. This has been the Parental Compass presented by Family Education and Support Services. We'll see you next week. Peace.